bako duba kumbalako bako duba kumbalako duba kumbalako bako duba kumbalako bako duba kumbalako bako duba kumbalako kumbalako bako duba kumbalako duba kumbalako.
Yo, what's going on guys? It's Alien, back with another video. The last time I thoroughly discussed unused content in BFN with you guys was way back during the BFN picnic video. One of the highlights of that video, if not the highlight of that video, was Toxic Zombie. There were a lot of interesting things we discussed throughout that portion, and if you're interested, I'll leave a card at the top right of the screen for you to check out that video. If not, I'll leave a link in the description of this video for you to check out after you're done with this one. Another thing that's worth mentioning is part of what made me want to revisit this topic were your guys' suggestions as well. A lot of you guys seem to enjoy when I create cut characters from these games and bring them back in full 3D. And the amount of people who ask me to create a full new playable character has increased since my last video as well. Luckily for you guys, since I've uploaded that BFN picnic video, there have been more discoveries made about BFN's unused content I'd like to explore in this video, well, namely one character. In this video, not only will I be showcasing Toxic Zombie's entire kit in-game, I'll also be creating a full 3D model of the character based off of official concept art for the character, and you know what? I didn't say that Toxic Zombie will be the only character we'll take a look at in this video, so if I were you, I'd stick around. Oh, and one more thing, memberships are now up on my channel and they're only $2 a month. So, if you love videos like this, please consider supporting me, because things like this are what enable me to continue making the videos that you guys love watching. Alright, here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Toxic Zombie. So this was found actually not too long ago. I think it was found earlier this year. Funnily enough, it's not like this was posted this year. This was posted way back in 2024 apparently. It's just that nobody found it until now. But here he is, and he has a bunch of these alternative colors as well, and they're all really fun to look at. I really like the yellow and the pink one, because I feel like what they were trying to do with this is, I don't really know why they have alt colors. Potentially this could have been them either conceptualizing what the default look for the character was, or potentially they were conceptualizing the you know how like in BFN there's like different recolors of characters? I know there's Crimson Fisticups or Reflecto Brains, for instance. Like those kinds of skins, maybe that's what they were looking into for Toxic Zombie. This could potentially be what that is. I don't know. But I do like the yellow and pink one, because what I feel like they were trying to do is they were trying to make a cheese themed one and an Oozivore themed one. Now, I don't know if that was the idea, but I don't know, like it seems like that's what they were going to do, and that's a really clever idea. I love that idea so much. But besides that, I really love the design they came up with for this guy. It's so creative. I remember a lot of people speculating that it would just be some like generic brown coat looking at a zombie with a hazmat suit, and I'm like, listen man, if they were to make Toxic Zombie, there is no way he's some generic hazmat suit zombie. No way. No way he's gonna look like Dr. Toxic. I just had a really strong feeling that they would do a very unique design for the character, and I mean, lo and behold, look at him, bro. He's like a booger monster, bro. He's just a pile of goo in that helmet, and I love it. I like to imagine this guy is just kind of like slushing around in his helmet, and his eyes, mouth, and nostrils are actually like separate pieces that kind of move around as you look around and as the character moves, just jostling around in the helmet, kind of like a jar almost, right? Like you can imagine like him just being kept in a jar. I always thought that that'd be a pretty fun way of imagining him. Unfortunately, we can't really do that with the mod tools for BFN, so I couldn't have this like cool physics-based like liquid inside his helmet type of design. Although I do have another way of going about replicating that look, and you'll see how I handle it later on in the recording. But just as a quick FYI, there is a better way to handle this kind of character design. I just couldn't do it because of the mod tool limitations. So I didn't. But there you go. That's Toxic Zombie's concept art. Now, if we go back to what we're looking at here, I initially start the model off by taking the base mesh that I've made in my previous video, so if you're interested, go watch that. And I use this as a base for Toxic Zombie, which maybe some of you guys are looking at that and going, why? He has a completely different silhouette. And that's true, but the thing I liked about the brown coat I've already made, he already has some of these like landmarks made on his body. And what I mean by landmarks, they're kind of like I guess like muscle landmarks or bony landmarks almost, right? And what I can do is I can inflate the model and then start repositioning it and molding it into the silhouette that I'm looking for. And I spent a lot of time doing this, by the way. I'd spent a lot of time trying to get the shape right because he kind of has this like half hourglass look where his upper body is skinny, but then the lower part of his belly gets like really fat. And I think that's just because he's like made out of like a goo, right? And you know, gravity would pull the goo downwards, so there's going to be more volume at the bottom compared to the top. And replicating that shape is very, very like awkward to do in 3D, at least it was for me, because I've never had to do something like this before, but I think I eventually got the idea. And yeah, again, you'll see, trust the process later on in the recording, I'll get that shape better. But coming back to the brown coat though, I use them as a base because it's nice because I have these muscle groups or these like bony landmarks that even after inflating the model, even though they're very distorted, they are still there. And so I can eventually later on just kind of keep a mental note of, all right, this is where this muscle group used to be. We can smooth this out and then I can go back and then like start re-adding those details. And you're already starting to see me do this a little bit with the shoulders and the triceps and even his pecs. Well, not really pecs. They're I don't really know what you want to call them because technically I don't really think he has like visible muscle groups. They're probably just all like goo, right? However, for the case of creating a base mesh, I can design the suit around and create some kind of cohesion as to what you're looking at. I did give him like muscle groups. I do eventually later on make him covered in slime, kind of like Toxic Brains in GW2, and again, you'll see that later on in the recording. But for now, I'm creating a base mesh that's cohesive for me to understand. One thing that is also worth mentioning is when I took the brown coat base mesh, I did cut off the hands and the feet from that mesh. I think I also cut off the head maybe, and if not, well, I completely dumbed down the head, so it's just a nub. And the reason why I did this is because inflating doesn't really work well with hands and feet. It technically can with the head, but the head was going to be completely different anyways, so there's no point in keeping the head, so I didn't bother to. What I'm instead going to do is I'm going to just attach new feet and new hands to the character. Now, one thing worth mentioning is currently we do not have custom animation support for BFN modding. If anybody watching knows how to fuck around with that kind of shit, it would be really, 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 really cool. If anybody watching knows how to code or do some crap to get that kind of thing working, there are people who are actively trying to figure it out. It'd be cool if you could help them figure out if you know a thing or two, but I don't know, I'm just saying. Custom animations would be insane for this game. But because it's not working properly right now, I unfortunately can't give this guy custom animations, so he's going to be based off of somebody else. I think the perfect candidate for this, and this is who we ended up going with, was Engineer, because he has a similar build to Toxic Zombie, so you know, go figure. And the reason why I bring this up is for two things. Number one, slightly lower your expectations for the final product. There will be some weird clipping with the model in-game because we quite literally can't do anything about it. But second off, this means we have to design Toxic Zombie around Engineer's skeleton. Now, what I mean by designing Toxic Zombie around Engineer's skeleton, maybe people who mess around with animation or character design, you know what a skeleton is in terms of technical terms. But for everybody else who doesn't really mess around with this kind of stuff, pretty much what a skeleton is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like, right? Usually when you're creating a character and you finish optimizing them for the game, this is after the retopology process, you create a skeleton for the character. Now, this skeleton, much like the human body, is made up of bones, and each bone controls parts of the body. And you can even do things like implement inverse kinematics, IK, so that way, let's say when you move the arm, it might move a little bit of the shoulder as well. You can do pretty cool things like that. The idea is this skeleton is then used to puppeteer the model, and then that's where the animators take that and then, you know, they animate with it. Problem is, because we cannot create custom skeletons with modding for Battle for Neighborville, it has to be based off of Engineer's skeleton as well, which is another limitation. And the reason why I mention all of this is not only because it's interesting information to tell you guys, but also because, unfortunately, I had to take the Engineer's hands and then slap them onto my model. Now, I am not a huge fan of doing this kind of stuff because it's usually like very sloppy and, you know, you're technically like stealing. But the reason why I did this in this case is because it is insanely tedious to try and create hands from the ground up that line up perfectly with the bones, specifically the fingers. It is insanely tedious to do that. It would save us a lot more time if I just took the engineer's hands. I would still have to remodel aspects of the engineer hands anyways, so it's not like it's completely lazy, but unfortunately that limitation kind of left me with no choice. Technically, if I really wanted to spend that much time creating new hands, I could. It's literally not worth my time because no one's even going to notice it. And just to preface, I already have hands and feet that I've made that I like to just import into new projects, so I don't need to reuse somebody else's hands. I have my own thing for doing that, so I don't have to create new hands for the ground up. So I would have been perfectly willing to use my own. It's just, again, the ones that I make aren't designed around engineers' skeleton, because why would they? However, I will say I do use my own feet for this model, so at least that part of it is original. I mean, the whole thing is original. It's literally just the hands that aren't. But even then, I changed the hands so much, you would never think that it's engineers in the first place. You won't even notice. But I just thought it was worth mentioning because you'll probably see me do this in the recording, and when you do, I don't want people like saying, oh, do you take stuff from the models? No, I don't really do that unless it's called for. In this situation, it is called for. So when I'm working on the face, I have a really difficult time working on it because right now I'm not designing the face around his current design, which is just a pile of goo trapped in a helmet. I'm trying to create his head, not even just his face, but his head, as if it's not covered in goo. But the problem is there's no concept art for that. So for a really long time, the head looks really goofy. This is like the Michelin Man, Stay Puft Pastry Man stage of the model, right? He looks really stupid, but like I said, that's just because I have no concept art for him. Later on in the recording, I have my friend Lucky, who, by the way, rigged this character, so thank you to him. I had him create multiple different concepts of what his head could look like, and I ended up settling on this one. And I think the reason why I like it the most is because some of the other ones look a little bit too similar to Imp, and some of the other ones look a little bit too similar to Engineer. This one, I think, was pretty unique, and I really like how it emphasized the cheekbones. Funnily enough, you'll never see this version of the character in the game because we ended up not using it, but it was still nice to have for the sake of the base mesh, because you never know when you're going to use it. Who knows, maybe in the future we might end up doing a thing where you can change cosmetics for the guy, and you'll be able to see his head when you disable the helmet. Who knows? Now, one little issue I kind of created for myself when working on this model was his T-pose, and specifically his legs. I had his legs kind of pushed back a little bit, and this is because usually when you're creating a T-pose for a character, I see people say this thing where the back of the feet usually should line up with the butt, and that's exactly what I did here. However, I don't know if that same argument applies to a character of a bigger size like Toxic Zombie, but I did notice that Engineer didn't do that, and because I had to align Toxic Zombie's T-pose to Engineer's T-pose, because again, like I said, I have to design it around Engineer's skeleton, I had to go ahead and reposition the feet entirely. Not the feet, but the legs. It was a little bit annoying, but I eventually got it done. I don't think I have the recording of it, but I do fix it. So his T-pose is now not like that. But the reason why you would do it the way I had it originally, I think, is because you want to make the character not look like it's off balance when creating the T-pose. And usually the back of the feet lines up with somebody's butt, I suppose. But besides that, my job from here on out is to just polish up the model and then make sure the base mesh looks nice. I just do finishing touches. Like I said, I then attach the hands into the model, and then I make sure the hands look nice by re-adding some of those details that were lost, because I took this from the Retopo, keep that in mind. The Retopo is the lower quality version of the model, and if you remember from my last video, the normals get put on top of that. See, those details that come from the normal map aren't on the Retopo. I have to recreate that manually, and so that's pretty much what I'm doing with the hands. And then eventually I get back to the face, and I give him his little nostrils because I completely forgot to do that. And I don't think I have it in this recording, but I do also give him his forehead wrinkles and gums and teeth. Pretty much at this point, the base mesh is done, so now I'm going to create a new base mesh. Now this base mesh is going to be the slimy version. This is the one that's covered in slime. Think Toxic Brains from GW2. So this will probably be used for like most of the skins, which is pretty funny because I know I'm putting so much effort into creating a base mesh for this character, and I mean, if you remember, you could see the concept art, he's covered entirely with a hazmat suit. So it might seem a little bit counterproductive to give him a base mesh in the first place, but I promise you it does come in handy later. So doing things like this are worth my time. Initially, when I'm creating the little slime droplets, I do them manually using the clay buildup brush, and then I eventually smooth it out, and then I use the crease tool to sharpen up some of those edges so I can give it that stylized look. However, that's going to take a while to do throughout the entirety of the body. I primarily do this on the head, because the head is a smaller part of the body, and you also want to make sure that the details don't overlap with whatever is going on with the face, because then it looks too distracting. So I make sure to use tools that are a little bit more particular, so that way I can get finer details. But as you'll see here, the rest of the body, I use masks to create the slime. And all it literally is I will go ahead and draw out the general shape of the slime. Then I will smooth out the top and give it this like fade effect. And the reason why I do this is so that way there's a transition from the regular body to the slime. And the reason why this is really important is because when I go in there with an inflate tool, I can add thickness near the bottom. So it seems like the slime is dripping. It's seeping from the top to bottom. Because as I've discussed earlier with the concept art, gravity is bringing the slime down. Hence why in the concept art, there is more volume on the bottom of his body than there is the top. And it's the same thing here. We want to achieve a similar effect. So if the top part of the mask isn't as effective as the bottom, that means the bottom is going to be bigger than the top. So it's going to give it this effect that the slime is gradually falling down. And then from there on out, you want to give it some variation. You can even give it some droplets. I know that I took a look at Toxic Brains and I saw how they handled it with that character. And then you also want to make sure not to use symmetry. I do use a little bit of symmetry here, and I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of regret doing that. It doesn't really look that good, but fortunately I can get away with it because majority of his body isn't showing. But you shouldn't really use symmetry, and eventually you'll see I just stop using symmetry because it wasn't really effective. And I make sure to add a lot of unsymmetrical areas to try and cover up those areas that are symmetrical because I already have them made, and I gonna be honest, I didn't feel like going back and fixing it because it wasn't going to be noticeable enough to need to go back and fix it. Not that it justifies what I've done, but I now know not to do this, and I'm telling you, don't do that. Hell, I even knew that I probably shouldn't have done something like that, even going into this model. I just really wanted to try and cut corners, and, you know, and it is what it is, right? Like I've mentioned in my previous videos, and I'm going to mention it here. I think I already just said it, but I'm going to say it again just to emphasize. It's a detail that nobody's going to notice, and visibly so in this case, because like I said, as you'll see later on, the hazmat suit will completely cover up the symmetrical areas. So it's not worth my time to go back and fix these things, because it's a detail that ultimately nobody's going to really notice a whole lot. Another thing that I think is also worth mentioning is determining where these slime droplets should go wasn't the hardest thing for me, because I guess the general rule of thumb is to make sure it doesn't cover up important areas, right? So like for instance, you don't really want it covering up, let's say, the kneecaps. You don't want it covering the fingers or even the palm of the hands, I'm gonna be honest. You probably don't even want it on the palm of the hands. You want to use it in areas that are not obstructing from the main silhouette of the character. So like for instance, in Toxic Zombie's face, a really big and free area is his belly. Not much is going on there. So it's a completely smooth surface for me to add as much detail as I'd like. One that I do go a little bit crazy on though is his back, and that's because he has a lot of fat folds. And so to kind of emphasize the dirtiness of the character, since these zombies are canonically pretty dirty, and he's also doused in toxic goo, I make sure to have fun with that, and I try and put slime in the seams of his rolls of fat, just to kind of emphasize that this guy, he's not clean. He's not clean. He's the type of guy to take a piss and not wash his hands afterwards. But again, you want to make sure that you're not taking away too much detail from the face, because like I said, if you add too much of these details, you end up distracting from the main design of the character. Another reason why you also don't want to do it is because this isn't real life. Real life, yes, there would be a lot of detail, but this isn't real life. Part of making something that is stylized is everything to an extent is always gestural, right? You always want to make something feel real, even though it actually doesn't work that way. The entire point of it is to convey without having to overdo, because when you overdo is when you make it realistic. but we want to avoid that. Alright, so far we've made pretty much the entirety of the base mesh of the character. So, I hand the model off to Virjoinga so that way he can retopologize both the clean version of the sculpt and the slime version of the sculpt. Big thank you to Virjoinga for that. So right now, we have him implemented into the game, and he's just T-posing, but this is just to see how the character looks like in-game, even if he doesn't have all his clothing yet. A few things to note outside of obvious things like he doesn't have any eyeballs and he doesn't have a mouth, is the character is quite small, so that's something we're going to have to increase the size of later on. And another thing to note as well is the color we're using is the color value taken straight from BFN Picnic's files, which is the color that they used for Toxic Zombie. Now, I don't know if this is going to be the final color, but you know what, it's safe to say that it's good enough, and that's what they had in the files, so we'll leave it. It looks fine enough. So the second test was us testing out how the character looks animated. Now, Lucky hasn't rigged the character yet. We used something called automatic weights to weight paint the character automatically for us. Now, there are a couple bugs with this. You can notice with the arms are kind of crooked. The hands are probably like crooked as well. There's a lot of parts of the model that aren't working properly, but that's just because, again, this was automated for the sake of seeing how well the character works with animations. So far, it's working pretty well considering that it's just an automatic rig. So this lets us know that the proportions of the character are probably aligned well enough to engineer skeleton for it to probably look good in the final product. Next up, we want to give this guy the toxic shader that Toxic Brains has from Garden Warfare 2. Now, I don't know if PopCap was going to do this, but like I said, I couldn't do the physics-based liquid, so we're going to have to settle for something else. In this case, I just thought, let's just do what Toxic Brains has in Garden Warfare 2. And so the reason why I'm showing you Scientist is because when you're modifying a game, you can't really add something completely new. So in this case, we can't add a completely new shader. But what we can do is we can modify a pre-existing shader in the game. And Scientist is a perfect candidate because he has purple goo in his backpack. We can modify the settings of to make it look like Toxic Brains' goo. So when we just slap on his normal purple goo, this is what it looks like. It's pretty cool looking, but not really what we're looking for. However, if I were to go ahead and change some of the settings up, now this is more like it. There are still some issues with this version of the shader that I eventually do resolve later on, but for now you guys kind of get the idea. Alright, so now that I'm done with the base mesh, I can now move on to the hazmat suit. So the first thing I do is I cut off a part of the torso from the base mesh to use as a base for the hazmat suit. Specifically, the part of the hazmat suit that covers the torso. Now, the reason why I need it to be specific to the torso is because the arms and the legs use a tube. Now, I forget what the name of the tube is, but there's a specific kind of tube that has this pattern. And initially, I try using curves to create this kind of pattern for the arms and the legs. But the problem is it ends up looking very, not only just janky, but very, very bulky as well. And the reason why I tried using curves is because usually curves are quite modular and can be easier to work with. But to be quite honest with you, maybe I was using them incorrectly, but I don't think I was. I just think that they are harder to work with in this specific scenario. So what I ended up doing instead, and I don't show it in this recording, but you'll see later on, I eventually use an array modifier to create that shape. And it works far better, and to be honest, worked better than the curves. It was easier to work with and was more modular, which is funny because curves are supposed to be modular, but I guess just in this specific case, they weren't as useful as I thought they'd be. And something that's worth noting as well, I actually spend quite a lot of time attempting to create just the base of the hazmat suit in the first place. And when I say base, I mean like the block out of the hazmat suit. I kind of struggled figuring out how I wanted to start making this because, again, usually a hazmat suit is just, it's very simple, right? It's a suit that covers your arms, your hands, your torso, your legs, and even your feet, and in some cases, even the head as well. But Toxic Zombie's design was too unique for me to just do that, because again, the arms have a completely different shape, the legs have a completely different shape. One foot is wearing a boot, the other one is wearing a Geiger counter, and then the helmet is just completely made out of glass with a very unique shape at the top. Then you also have like rips as well on one of the arms, and it's just so much going on. And it's good because it keeps the character from looking basic, but made me struggle a little bit on how I even wanted to work on this model in the first place. You'll even see at a point, I even start trying to change up how the arms look like. I was taking inspiration from Space Cadet, which is why you see her on the left side in this part of the recording. However, again, like I said, I eventually just decide to use an array modifier to create the arms instead, because to be honest, what I was thinking of taking inspiration from Space Cadet wasn't really a good idea. Maybe there's some merit in something like that if it was a skin, but honestly, it's not worth cheaping out the actual design of the character because I couldn't figure it out. So again, don't worry, I do eventually figure it out, and I think it looks good in the end. Now, when I'm creating the gloves, it's as simple as cutting out the hand and a little bit of the wrist as well, and a little bit beyond that too, because he has quite a big glove. And much like the torso, I just inflate the glove and then I shape out how I want it to look like, and that's pretty much it. Besides that, it's just kind of adding extra details on top of it to make it match the concept art. But I don't do those extra details until later, because keep in mind, right now I am just blocking out the overall shape or the silhouette of the hazmat suit. And you can see me doing this with the boot as well. For quite a while, the boot stays pretty low quality and low detail, but that's because I'm not worrying about adding extra details yet. I just want to make sure that the shape is there before I even worry about refining it. Because if the shape doesn't look good, then what makes you think the final product is going to look good? So I make sure to spend a lot of time on the basic shape of the silhouette, and I also make sure that it aligns well with the base mesh as well. So that way, if for whatever reason I need to make skins of this character in the future, it's easier for me to work with this hazmat suit because it was designed and properly fitted around the base mesh. Now, this doesn't inherently mean that the hazmat suit fits perfectly with the base mesh. Actually, quite the contrary. I had to actually cut parts out of the base mesh so that way I could make the hazmat suit look good, specifically with the arms and legs. And this is because when creating the tube arms, for me to make Toxic Zombie's regular arm not overlap the tube arms, I would have to make the tube arms bigger, but the problem is that ends up making the character look really bulky, which not only interferes with the silhouette of the character, but also it's just a hitbox concern as well, because again, why does this guy have really big arms? So I decided to keep them small, but the problem is the arm starts overlapping. So I just cut those part of the arms out, and you know what? It works perfectly fine, because something to keep in mind is the player is never going to see this part of the base mesh. So for performance and optimization reasons, we get rid of it because again, we would just be wasting memory loading these things in when, well, the player is never going to see it. So it's a problem that actually ends up working itself out. From here on out, it's just a matter of shaping the rest of the block out and also re-adding some details I lost when cutting out the torso and turning it into the torso piece of the hazmat suit. And much like the tube arms and the tube legs, Toxic Zombie has a lot of these tubes that are connected around the different kinds of gadgets he has on his character. And again, I use an array modifier to create these. One thing that was kind of interesting was the little control panel he has on his chest, because it's just kind of resting there, which I wasn't entirely sure how to visualize in 3D, because I did try putting like a rectangle on his chest. It didn't look good. So my interpretation of what they had there is to actually try and push it into his hazmat suit, as if it's molded into his hazmat suit. And so whilst I don't refine the details yet, I do add a little bit of an imprint around where the panel is to make it seem like this panel is actually digging into his hazmat suit. It's been molded into the suit, built into the suit. Again, I don't really know if that's what they were intending on with this design, but that's how I interpreted what they had in the concept art. And for now, like everything else, the Geiger counter is just a simple block out. In this case, it's just a rectangle, and I leave it like that for a while until I eventually get back to the Geiger counter and give it its proper detail. Speaking of which, we're now going to start detailing the hazmat suit. So coming right back to the torso, we're going to start working on the panel area. And all I'm going to go ahead and do is make this look a little bit more like a divot rather than just like a bump. And the way I do this is just kind of resetting what I already had by smoothing it out, and then I just kind of dig into it a little bit, and then I use the crease tool around it. I then go ahead and I start giving it some wrinkles around the area, so that way you can kind of tell that there's pressure being applied to that area. I also make sure to redefine some of his fat, so that way it's a little bit more visible even through the hazmat suit. And I do this by using a little bit of the clay buildup to emphasize it, but I also use the crease tool to sharpen those edges, and I do the same thing with the actual creases surrounding the control panel. I do this for any kind of wrinkle, by the way, and it's something that you should do too if you are going for some kind of stylized effect, especially if it's something akin to BFN. You want to make sure you sharpen your wrinkles. From here on out, I start adding areas in which there are slime imprints, and I do this the same way I did when I was creating the slime variation of the base mesh. I just create a mask that's in the shape that I want the slime to be in, and then I go ahead and smooth the top of that mask to create a fade effect. From there on out, it's just using the inflate tool to get the 3D shape that I'm looking for. Beyond that, I'm now starting to create holes within the hazmat suit. Now I'm going to fill up these holes with goo that's going to start oozing out of the suit, as you can see in the concept art. It should hopefully look like his hazmat suit is jam-packed with a bunch of slime. And the way I create the slime protruding out of these holes is by starting off with a sphere and then molding it into the shape that I'm looking for. From there on out, I just refine it and make sure that the shape looks nice. It is also worth pointing out that I stylize the look of the goo that's pouring out of his suit dependent on how it's pouring out of the suit. So in the first one you saw me do, there is goo kind of piled up on top of each other, whereas on the second one, it's more like one just continuous blob that's falling out. So one is more rounded, whereas the other one has sharper edges. They're still ultimately round at the end of the day, but that small distinction between the two is definitely important, because it helps convey how the goo is falling out of the suit, whether it's one continuous blob or multiple blobs falling out at once. I then go ahead and make sure to add a bunch of goo around his neck piece. Again, not only is this part of the concept art, but this also helps emphasize that his suit is jam-packed with toxic goo, toxic slime, and he's dirty. It's all over him. Once I'm done with that, I go ahead and grab the Retopo that Virjoinga made, and I take a stripe out of the middle of his hazmat suit to then use this as a base for the zipper. And fortunately for me, the zipper is a very simple shape, so I don't even need to detail it a whole lot. Beyond that, I go ahead and I start cutting out parts of his arm that end up getting hidden underneath the tube that's coming from the hazmat suit. And this is what I was talking about earlier, about how the player's never going to see this part of the arm, so it doesn't need to exist. So now I don't even have to worry about the arm overlapping the tube that comes from the hazmat suit. So now I start working on some finer details, and I start off by working on the helmet. Now, the helmet, I use a combination of the subdivision modifier and the solidify modifier. And in case you don't know what those two things are, these are very basic things in Blender, by the way, but I'll explain it just for the audience. All subdivision is it pretty much just adds more vertices to the object, meaning the object just gets a higher resolution. And solidify modifier just allows you to add thickness to the object in a convenient and non-destructive way. So pretty much what non-destructive means is this is like a modifier. I haven't applied it yet, and at any given moment I can just delete it and the model will go back to its default state. And so I can spend a lot of time moving a bunch of these sliders, checking boxes, and seeing how I like the look of it before I actually commit to that shape. Or in other words, before I apply the modifier. And I go ahead and I mess around with selecting edge loops, marking sharps, and defining certain edges by creasing them by using the edge crease tool. And what I'm trying to accomplish here is I'm trying to make the tip of his helmet almost have a rounded top, as if it's following the shape of the base of his helmet. And then once I'm done with that, it's just a matter of giving him his little antenna, which is as simple as grabbing a cylinder, making it longer, extending it along the z-axis, and you make the cylinder get gradually smaller the taller it gets, and then you add some edge loops in the middle of the cylinder so that way you can curve it, and then you just add a sphere at the end of it, and then there you go. That's pretty much what the antenna is. Very simple, nothing crazy. So now is when we're entering the first hard surface model that is pretty detailed. Now, it's not the most complex thing ever, for sure, but keep in mind, I'm not really a hard surface modeler, so this is something that I had to spend a little bit of time on to get right. It's also just an interesting shape, and to be quite frank with you, I don't even really know what this is supposed to be, so I don't know what to refer to this in the recording, but it's just a thing that sits on another thing. Now, What I mean by this is what you're looking at sits on top of this little gadget he has on his right arm. That's what I mean by a thing on a thing. I don't know what both things are supposed to be. They're just kind of there. But they look cool though. They look cool. And as a matter of fact, on the topic of his right arm, you can see that in the concept art, he's holding his hand out like he's holding a weapon, yet there is no weapon there. And maybe I should have mentioned this sooner, but I suppose better late than never. He does not have concept art for his gun, unfortunately. But I've thought of like what his weapon could be. One of the first guesses that a lot of people like to think is something akin to Demo Man's sticky bomb launcher, since he is a sticky bomb launcher class. And I could totally see that. I mean, hell, if you look at the concept art, he's holding out a weapon, but only with one hand. So that very well could have been the case, but it is also worth mentioning that majority of the zombies hold their weapons with one hand. I mean, Foot Soldier's holding an assault rifle-esque weapon, and he's only holding it with one hand. So, it's no shit is he going to be holding the weapon with one hand. Almost all zombies do. I think the only exception to this is All-Star and Scientist, kind of. It depends on the game. If it's GW, he's holding it with one hand. If it's BFN, he's holding it with two. But nevertheless, perhaps it could have been a one-handed weapon. I also do like to imagine that potentially he could have been holding like an actual rifle, because in case you don't know, in the game's files, his weapon is referred to as a bio rifle, which doesn't really sound like a sticky bomb launcher if you ask me. So potentially what it could have been is he could have had a full rifle. I think that idea actually has some merit to it as well. Imagine like a full like sniper rifle that shoots out these explosive sticky bombs. It almost reminds me of something like the Scavenger from Call of Duty Black Ops 1 Zombies and Call of the Dead, if you know what that is. And if not, well, this is what it looks like. Just imagine something like that in BFN. Maybe it's like a weird idea, but I don't know. To me, it's cool. And it's an idea that isn't even that like crazy as well. I just think that aesthetically, it'd be really cool if he had this like big sniper rifle type weapon that shoots explosives. That's pretty cool. I have also heard some other people suggest some funny things that I don't think PopCap would have done, but are still cool to think about. I know somebody suggested like a hand cannon. Something like Mega Man, for instance. Like, that would be pretty funny if he had that. Although I don't think that's what they were going to do. It's still a pretty unique concept. But anyways, once I'm done with that model, I decide to take a break from that arm gadget and I move over to his glove. Now, what I do with his gloves is I mask out the tips of his fingers, because in the concept art, I've noticed two things. Number one, where the tips of his finger are, the glove is thinner, and also the gloves are a different color. So what I decide to do here is I create a mask to mask out the tip of the fingers. And of course I do readjust the size of the fingers, but what I also decide to do is I decide to vertex paint the tips of the fingers as well whilst the mask is active. And the reason why this is useful to do, what I can do with vertex painting is paint it black, white, and anything in between, and use that as a way to create a mask for when I am later messing around with shaders. And as you're seeing here, I can now procedurally change the color of the tips of his fingers. And this is also very nice too, because if I ever decide to make alt skins for the character, I now have even more control of the parts of his hazmat suit, in this case, his gloves. And in case you're wondering, well, if you vertex paint on a sculpt, how do you put that onto a texture? Well, you can just bake it. You can just bake those details onto a texture. And that's what I'll eventually do with his entire model. As a matter of fact, all of the texturing was pretty much done on the sculpt, not the actual retopologized model. Now, this doesn't inherently mean that texturing on the sculpt is better. It's completely preference based. But once I'm done with that, I then do a little bit of modeling to create that little emblem he has on the top of his glove. Now, I'm not really sure what it's supposed to be, but again, it's probably just an interesting little shape to keep things not looking too basic. Now, I eventually go back to his little arm gadget and I give it extra details, like buttons on the back. I give it that little coil wire thing. Still not sure what it is, but I put it there because it's in the concept art. And then I also make sure to add screws around it as well. Now, one thing that wasn't in the concept art, but I added to help give this gadget a more interesting shape, is a panel on the front of it. I also gave it a bunch of these little, I don't really know what you want to call them. I suppose these like little beams on the bottom part of it as well. I took this idea from Scientist's backpack. It just kind of helps fills up space, but also it's something that Scientist does, and potentially you can see some of the other zombie tech in the game doing this, so I just thought, why not, right? I'm not sure if this was the move, but it helps fills up space, which is what I'm looking for at the end of the day, because the concept art does not have other angles of the gadget. Also, you can see at this point, I have completely filled out the panel. Now, I'm not going to show the recording of it because I didn't bother recording it, because it's just a bunch of filler, but you can only imagine it's just buttons, light bulb, and a dial. Like, it's It doesn't get more simple than that. Now I move on over to the boot. And again, the boot is pretty simple. I just make sure to increase the resolution of the basic shape of the boot, so now I can refine it even more and make sure that it looks smooth. Once I'm done with that, I start adding the finer details around the boot. Now I actually use sculpting for this because whilst polymodeling works perfectly fine, I just found it easier to sculpt these details out, and so that's exactly what I did. And I make sure to use a balanced amount of the scrape brush, the flatten brush, and the crease brush to get those sharp angles on the corners of, I'm not necessarily sure what you want to call this part of the boot, but you can see what I mean. I suppose the top part of the boot. I also make sure to give it a wrinkle in the back, because sometimes you can crease your shoes, and I'm imagining that this guy's hazmat suit is probably made up of something that is flexible, so it probably creases a lot. It also just makes his boot look less uniform, which is nice because, again, the zombies are very disorganized characters, so you want to make sure that at any chance you get, you can make them look sloppy. Now in this clip, I work on the valves that are on top of the gas tanks on his back. This was easily the most complicated hard surface object I had to polymodel, and so I spent a fair bit of time on this. I think I spent about like roughly 40 minutes on this alone, but I eventually do get it done. I make sure to really rely on the mirror tool so that way I don't have to go back and replicate one detail I made on one side of the model on all the other sides. But once I get the overall shape of the valve that I'm looking for, I then go ahead and I use the subdivision modifier to make the shape look more clean. I then go in and I use a combination of marking sharps and emphasizing creases along the edge loops to make sure that the valve doesn't look too round, but also not too sharp. You don't want to maximize the sharpness on some of these objects because in real life, nothing is perfectly sharp. Things might look sharp, but nothing is perfectly sharp. The only reason why you would make something perfectly sharp is because we're working with a stylized art style, but you still want to be careful on how sharp you make things because even if the art style is stylized, sometimes making something too sharp can seem a little bit weird. Again, on my last video, I discuss how there are some parts of, like, let's say the zombies' heads that are sharp, but then you look at the face and it's more smooth. It's kind of a similar deal here. Now, probably because this is a hard surface model, you're going to see more sharp edges and angles than you would on something more organic like a character, like a humanoid character or a plant. But again, generally speaking, you want to always keep yourself in check with this kind of stuff because you can push these details too far if you're not paying attention. Now, the last part I'll cover about the gas tanks themselves, or I suppose, again, I don't really know what you want to call this, but I'm going to call it the gas tank holder. Again, there is no behind angle of toxic zombie, so I just have to guess what this is going to be. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up giving him this like metal brace almost, and it gets put around his gas tank. Now, one thing I do to help make the shape look more unique is I give it some ridges around the sides of the brace, so that way the shape doesn't look too flat. And then finally, I use a curve modifier to put screws all along the brace. And once I'm done with that, those are pretty much the gas tanks complete. There are still some small details I need to add later on, but we'll worry about that later. So now I go back over to the head and I'm going to start making that unique head shape he has. Now this is what I was talking about earlier in the video, how I'm going to have a different way of handling his head shape since I can't use like a physics-based system to create that head. So what I start by doing is masking out his face. Once I'm done with that, I then go ahead and grab the glass that is being used in his helmet, and then I size it down, and then I start molding it around his face. Now the reason why I grab the glass from the helmet is because I want the shape of his head to be the same shape as the helmet, since if he was just kind of a liquid, his head would be filling up that space. And so to try and give the illusion that this isn't just a Frankenstein head, but rather like an actual liquid inside his head, I'm trying to fill as much space as possible in there. However, I do have to push back his face a little bit and make room, and this is because the eyeballs and the mouth might clip through the glass. From here on out, I start doing cleanup work to make sure that the face transitions smoothly onto this new head shape. I go and make the top of the head look ununiform to try and simulate that liquid look. And then I go ahead and start masking areas to yet again create that slime effect. And it's the same procedure as before. And now the last last thing I do once I'm done with that is I just go ahead and make some small readjustments to his eyes and his mouth. Specifically, I altered the position of the eyes a bit to make it kind of look like his face is drooping a little. Now, I make sure not to go too far with this droop effect, and this is because if I make it too unaligned, it's going to be hard to actually rig into Engineer's skeleton. So unfortunately, I can't really afford to make it more droopy. Maybe I can, but I don't really want to take that risk, and I don't want to make Lucky's job any harder. But once I'm done with that, that is pretty much his head complete. Now I decide to go back to the hazmat suit, and specifically the pants. All I really do here is I give him some tears on the right side of his pants. Nothing crazy. And then I go back into the torso, and I redefine some of the details here because I had previously increased the resolution. However, there was a little bit of artifacting left over from it being previously lower resolution. So I had to go back in and smooth out a lot of areas and redefine edges again, but this was easier said than done, nothing short of cleanup work. Now coming back to the Geiger counter, I'm going to add the goo dripping on top of the Geiger counter. This is actually a detail I think I missed out on, but fortunately I caught, and something that I unfortunately wasn't able to show you guys because of course my recording bugged out, but you can see in the back of the Geiger counter, I decided to add a wire. In the concept art, this doesn't exist, but I thought it would be cool to add it in because I felt like the back was a little bit too empty. And hell, maybe it is still a little bit too empty, but I'm hoping that the goo and this wire will help resolve that problem for the most part. It'd be pretty cool if we could even go as far to give this wire jiggle physics, but unfortunately modding limitations don't let us do this, so it is what it is, but it still looks nice nonetheless. So now finally, I go back through all the tech and I make sure to add a bunch of scuff marks. Now I use these custom masks made by my friend Dio, so huge thanks to him. And these masks were designed to mimic the ones that BFN use. So a good example of this would be on Imp. He has like a giant scuff mark on his helmet. Another example could be on All-Star's weapon, and I'm sure if you look even further, you'll be able to find this on characters like Scientist, Foot Soldier, Engineer, and plenty more characters. Now this process is pretty simple. It's just a matter of placing down scuff marks where I like. And as far as edgeware is concerned, you just use the scrape brush and you kind of scrape out parts of the edges. I specifically make sure to do this on his gadget that's on his arm, his control panel that's on his chest, his helmet, his Geiger counter, and also the gas tanks on his back. Now, I don't bother going too in-depth with these scuff marks because for some of the smaller parts of his tech, it's not really noticeable enough to really warrant a scuff mark, but it also might make the shape of that object too hard to look at because again, it's a really small part of the tech this character has, and when something is really small, it's best to keep it simple, not only for the sake of just making the model more optimized. Since it's a small part of the character, nobody's going to notice it as much, so you can afford to not make it insanely detailed. But again, it's also just kind of a design philosophy where when something is small, you don't want to make it too detailed because then it's hard to tell what you're even looking at in the first place. But once I'm done with that, I am officially done with the sculpt for Toxic Zombie. And so I think now we can take a little break from this character and check out how he looks like in game. Alright, so yet again, I send the hazmat suit sculpt over to Virjoinga so that way he can retopologize it, and now we have it in the game. As you can see, we still did use automatic weights to create the rig for the character since there are a lot of things that are broken about him. You can see that the valves on his gas tank are stretching out crazy. His Geiger counter is twitching a little bit, and so much more. There's a lot to really mention here, but as you can see, so far, the character is starting to take its shape a little bit better. Another thing as well to mention is we've also increased the size of the character. Now, funnily enough, Engineer is actually one of the smaller zombie classes in the game, and so for us to align Toxic Zombie to his skeleton, we had to actually go and size him down in Blender. But when we brought him in the game, we used a buff that increases the size of the character you're playing as, so that way we could resize him back to his regular form. And right now, Toxic Zombie is actually the tallest class in the game, and that's by and large because of his antenna, just barely being taller than Superbrains' hair. Now, was PopCap going to make Toxic Zombie the tallest zombie in the game? I have no clue, but we don't have any measurements for the character, so this is what we ended up with. We're now at the home stretch of the model. The final thing we need to do is texturing. Throughout the course of me making this model, you may have noticed that colors were being applied to each individual part of the model, but I wasn't actually texturing it. Texturing is more advanced than just slapping a color on it. And so that's what you're seeing me do right here. The first thing I start out with is the torso, and I am doing the same thing I did in my last video. I am drawing a mask on sharp edges using vertex painting, and pretty much what I am doing is, again, black and white. So the parts that I do want to be visible will be white, and then the parts I don't want to be visible will be black. And what this allows me to do is once I'm done masking out the areas I want, I can go ahead and use shaders to change the color of said areas. BFN likes to go ahead and make the highlights on areas that have sharper angles, and areas that are within the crevices of whatever type of object you're working with tend to have a little bit of dark shadows in between. In this case, it would be in between the creases of the hazmat suit, underneath some of the slime imprints, things like that. And I create a separate vertex group for the shadows. And what this allows me to do is, now that these are both their own vertex groups, I can change the color of them and modify their settings individually from one another. And this also gives me the opportunity to change the order of the layers. And so now I can go back and even add a gradient. But it's not just limited to that either. The next thing I start working on are the slime stains. So these are going to be located where the slime is oozing out of. And because I am using a mask to create these slime stains, I can not only use this to define the color of the slime, but I can also use this to help create the emission map for Toxic Zombie. And in case you don't know what the emission map is, it's another texture map, and this texture map determines the emission of something, so how bright something is, whether or not something glows. Which is really useful because now I can have these stains glowing alongside the slime, since Toxic Zombie will glow just like Toxic Brains does. And so hopefully in-game it'll give us this really cool effect. One thing I also make sure to do is I add a little bit of noise to the hazmat suit as well, just so that way the texture doesn't look completely flat. And finally, I add this little caution decal on the back of his hazmat suit, mainly just to fill up space. Now, the next thing I work on is I work on adding highlights on the head. Now, kind of the unfortunate thing about this is because of how the shader is designed in BFN, I unfortunately cannot give any part of the body a normal map, a color map, pretty much any texture. It's only going to be able to use exclusively what the shader allows me to use. So unfortunately, I can't actually take advantage of what I'm making right here, but who knows, maybe at some point in the future, it would be useful to use this. Perhaps if you want to create like an animation with this character through Blender, this wouldn't be a limitation you'd have to worry about. I now go back to the hazmat suit and I start detailing the slime stains some more because they felt a little bit boring the way I had it previously. I make sure to make them look a lot more droopy and cartoony to help fit the game's art style. I then go in with the square blend brush and I start trying to make these things look blocky, because that's something I also noticed with BFN's textures, is that they like to make some of the detailing kind of blocky. So the next thing I do is more of the same. I start off by defining the gradient of his gadget on his arm, and then I eventually go in and I start stamping a bunch of these stains all over the gadget. I then go in and again with the square blend brush, I go ahead and I make these stains look more blocky to help fit the game's art style. Now, the next thing I have to do for his tech is I have to start creating a new mask. Now, this mask is going to be used to define the scuff marks on his tech. This was something that I actually forgot to compensate for when stamping down all the scuff marks around his tech. But it's okay because, like I said, I can go back and just create a mask. It's just that now it's going to take more time because I have to draw these masks manually. But again, just to preface, once I create this mask using vertex painting, I then go in and I create a more metallic look that this mask will end up using. So that way you can see that the scuff marks have the paint scratched off them versus the areas where the paint would be intact. And then the final part I worry about texturing is the Geiger counter. And the Geiger counter is pretty much the same story. I do this for not just the only things I've shown you. I've done this for the boot, I've done this for the pants, I've done this for the arms, I do this for the headgear. I'm just not going to show all of it because it is all literally the same process. However, with the Geiger counter, I do decide to do something a little bit different here. I do decide to add in some brown stains as well to help create some more contrast with the stains. And again, I also do draw in a scuff mark mask so that way I can define the areas that have the paint scratched off versus the areas that don't. I do also make sure to go in and give the Geiger counter an outline along the edges of the object, and I do forget to mention this, but I did the same thing for the tech as well. And of course, I do also make sure to give this thing a gradient as well. But once I'm done with that, that is pretty much the textures done, and it's now time for me to worry about baking these textures and setting up all the different kinds of texture maps. So whilst I'm in the middle of working on the textures, I send the retopologized model off to Lucky so that way he can now start rigging the character to Engineer's Skeleton. And before I show you guys what we have, I'd like to go ahead and give a big thanks to Virjoinga for retopologizing the model and setting up the UVs, Lucky for rigging the character, and Dio80H Name for creating the brushes I used for the battle damage. Without their help, this model would have taken a lot longer to make, and chances are we wouldn't have even seen it in-game if it weren't for these guys. So again, a big thanks to them. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and see how Toxic Zombie looks like in-game. Alright, so we are here alone in Thunderdome V2. Pretty great space for us to just kind of mess around and check out Toxic Zombie. So here he is, Toxic Zombie in-game. Isn't this thing a beauty? So let's start off with the basics. In case you don't already know, Toxic Zombie is a sticky bomb launcher class. In the game's files, specifically in BFN Picnic, the way his primary weapon works is that it has two charges. The first charge allows you to have these smaller sticky bombs, and then the second charge enables you to have these bigger sticky bombs. Now, since this was a conversion from Picnic to base game, the sticky bombs obviously don't look bigger, but the way you can distinguish the two is the bigger ones don't have any VFX, and the small ones, as you can see, have VFX. In BFN Picnic, I'm pretty sure the bigger ones use the Scallywag Imp's bomb ability as the temporary model, but we just didn't bother having it here because it's not necessarily important for the sake of the demonstration. And so the way his sticky bombs work is either A, somebody walks into them and then they automatically detonate. They do deal a lessened amount of damage when they detonate. However, if you do choose to detonate them manually, they end up doing more damage. Alright, so here we have our little friend Iceberg Lettuce, who is subsequently named Virjoinga. A little bit of a weird name for an iceberg lettuce, but that's besides the point. Which, by the way, peep the custom cosmetics on the character. All custom made from the ground up. I know, pretty cool. But that is besides the point. We want to see the damage that Toxic Zombie's primary weapon does. So, as I've mentioned earlier, when an enemy is within the vicinity of the sticky bomb, it will automatically detonate. So on the first charge, the sticky bomb does 10 damage. Actually, does it do 10 damage? I'm pretty sure this thing can actually do 20. No, it's 10. It's 10 alright. And funnily enough, as you just saw there, I did 10 damage. However, I didn't actually do the damage, and that's because Toxic Zombie uses explosion damage, which is the same kind of damage that Acorn Sap Trap uses. And if you have played Acorn, you would definitely remember that Sap Trap doesn't always do its damage, and that's because there's a bug in BFN where certain damage types don't do damage, they no-reg constantly. So it's pretty funny to see that Toxic Zombie also has this issue, and it's built into his primary weapon. So now, if I were to detonate this primary weapon, I should be dealing more damage. Right there, 30 damage. So detonating the weapon manually actually ends up giving you more damage, which is pretty interesting to know. Now, I did also say that he has a second charge. So his second charge, the way it works is you have to hold it down for 1 second. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any visual indicator or meter to show this because the character was just very unfinished. But it does 35 damage when the enemy gets within the vicinity of the sticky bomb. Now, you guys might want to take a seat for what you're about to see, because when you manually detonate the second charge of the sticky bomb, it does a whopping 95 damage.
You serious?
Yeah, 95 damage, plus the toxic effect. Now, in PopCap's defense, in this state of the character, they were not concerned about balance. What they were concerned about is understanding what this character could be and getting a feel for some of the ideas they had for the character. So I know that PopCap isn't known for having outstanding balance, I understand that, but in Toxic Zombie's case, the character wasn't even done. Like, they were still conceptualizing what he would even do in the first place. So there's a pretty fair chance that this 90 damage was just purely placeholder. I don't think PopCap would be that stupid to add 95 damage on a second charge shot. But then again, some of the meta characters in this game, not even just this game, but all three of the shooters are pretty fucking bad. So I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I am willing to give PopCap benefit of the doubt with this character. One thing that is also worth mentioning is you will see that there is a toxic effect that gets applied to the character after they get hit with the sticky bomb. According to Virjoinga, apparently in Picnic's files, instead of it being 4 tick damage, apparently it was only going to do 5 damage and that was it. Like, it doesn't even tick, it's just 5 damage and that was it. There's a very fair chance that that is just a byproduct of this weapon not being finished. It's safe to assume that it probably would have had different stats to Grody Goop, much like how the Goop Shroom in BFN doesn't hit you with 40 damage when you get infected with Grody Goop by the Goop Shroom. But 5 damage and that's it? That doesn't sound right. So chances are it was just probably placeholder, and they just didn't get around to finishing this aspect of the character. Next up, we have the Decoy Toxic Barrel. Now, again, the placeholder model that they used for the Decoy Toxic Barrel doesn't exist in the base game, which is why when the Toxic Zombie Picnic files were converted into base game, it's using a dummy shield instead of the Toxic Barrel, and that is because that asset doesn't exist in this game, so we settled for another unused mesh in Battle for Neighborville's files. So this is what you're seeing, but just imagine this but a toxic barrel instead. So if you remember watching my BFN Picnic video, you would remember that I mentioned how this thing has a UI object tag. Much like how Engineer's Turret, when you look away from it, you will be able to see that little guy's icon on the corner of your screen. Well, whilst it doesn't have an icon of its own, you can literally see the arrow underneath Toxic Zombie. That is the UI object tag that this thing would have, so that way you can get a general idea as to where this guy is when you're not looking at it. So what does the decoy weapon do? Well, if you remember, we speculated that you would be able to detonate this decoy ability, and not necessarily no, it doesn't detonate, but it does something completely different. It's a teleport ability. That's right, you can teleport back to back. That's where I was originally, and now I'm back right there. That's how this thing works. Now, what I think PopCap was going to do is, as the name suggests, it's a decoy ability. What I think it was going to be is when you place down the decoy, that dummy shield wouldn't be a dummy shield. It wouldn't even be the aforementioned toxic barrel. What it probably would have been is a literal decoy, a fake toxic zombie that gets put in your place. And this probably would have been an ability that was designed to fake out the enemy so you can play mind games, which is pretty cool if you ask me. Now granted, the cooldown on this is very forgiving, an astounding, 3 seconds? Yeah, look at that, that's very broken. And there is also no limit to the range that this thing will take you. My guess is, again, this is a byproduct of PopCap just testing out and trying to figure out what they wanted this guy to be. I don't think PopCap was actually going to leave it like this in the final version of Toxic Zombie. So something that I've talked about with my friends is how could we keep this idea intact but keep it balanced? And we ended up saying that a pretty cool way of balancing this idea is what if it was turned into a teleport grenade? You can literally think of it like it's an ender pearl. Imagine throwing this grenade and wherever it lands is where you teleport. Now, to prevent players from being able to throw it from point A all the way over to point B, you could just give this grenade heavy gravity so that way it can't travel very far. And so this would allow Toxic Zombie to not necessarily travel far distances, but rather he could travel up areas vertically. So for instance, if I were Foot Soldier, getting from down here to up there would be pretty quick. However, what keeps Rocket Jump in check is the fact that Rocket Jump is only good for vertical mobility. It's not actually good for traveling long distances. And if we wanted to replicate the same effect for Toxic Zombie, this would be a pretty good way of going about it. Just give that throwable grenade heavy gravity, so that way it cannot travel far. The only thing you would really be getting out of it is vertical mobility, because I could then throw the teleport grenade from down here to up there. But if I wanted to, let's say, throw the grenade from here all the way over to there, chances are it might just land in the cheese and that'll fuck me over. So that would be one way you could keep it in check. And then of course, to keep the decoy idea intact, you would just make it so that way the decoy of Toxic Zombie spawns in your original place. Now, another thing that I mentioned in my BFN Picnic video, if you remember, is how I said that the Toxic Barrel can actually emit toxic damage to enemies around it. We speculated that this Toxic Barrel was a detonation based ability, but we were completely wrong. It's a teleport based ability. So how does it emit toxic damage? Well, the way they have it set up in the game's files is that it's as simple as you stand near it and then eventually you get hit with Grody Goop. It's just as simple as that. And this buff will keep on getting applied so as long as you're within the vicinity of the shield. Not shield, but Toxic Barrel, but you get the idea. And I'm pretty sure this effect goes away once the shield despawns, as you see right there. So now let's go ahead and move over to the second ability, which is Toxic Mode. Now, something to preface before I explain how Toxic Mode works is, well, I guess I'll have to explain part of how Toxic Mode works. Part of the way it works is that when you activate Toxic Mode, it will detonate all of your pre-existing sticky bombs. You may have noticed I've been detonating my sticky bombs despite not using Toxic Mode. This is because for the sake of the demonstration, we decided to map the detonation button to melee, so that way I can show you it without having to wait for a cooldown. But normally the way it works is that you cannot detonate your sticky bombs until you have used Toxic Mode. So pretty much the way Toxic Mode is it's literally just a charge up. You get near somebody, and so as long as you're near them, they get hit with Grody Goop. Now, something that is worth mentioning, I did hit the Iceberg Lettuce for 30 damage, but that's because in the mod I'm currently using, Grody Goop has nerfed stats, but if this was current patch, that would be doing 4 damage, and it would last as long as Grody Goop currently does. But that's pretty much it. Anybody within the vicinity of Toxic Mode can get hit by this. And in case you're wondering what the exact stats for Toxic Mode is, in terms of its blast radius, it has a 30-meter blast radius, however, it does 0 damage. However, the shockwave damage of Toxic Mode is 0.1, which means it adds on to the pre-existing 30 meters. And what the shockwave does is it applies the toxic buff, hence why you're seeing the toxic buff get applied to the Iceberg Lettuce. It's just not actually dealing damage. So simply put, the shockwave damage is the one applying the toxic buff within a 30.1 meter blast radius. And the actual explosion damage itself is 0 damage. Also, something that is worth mentioning is you also don't have many input restrictions when you are using Toxic Mode. I will say you can't shoot your primary when using it, so at least there's that. So I wonder if Toxic Mode is supposed to be some kind of run into somebody and then, well, there's many words I could use to describe what it is. I just don't want YouTube to demonetize this video, but you run into somebody and then there's a big boom. I think you kind of get what I'm trying to get at here. I think that's what Toxic Mode was supposed to be, which is a pretty funny idea. And something that is worth mentioning, because I know you think, oh, Yeti Imp and Dandelion, I fucking hate that thing. Yeah, I know. It was kind of intended to be like that. But something that is worth mentioning is the difference between Toxic Mode and Yeti Imp is that Yeti Imp has no sacrifice. There is no trade-off. It is literally just you use this ability, and if it fails, and it's at no expense to you. You pretty much survive unharmed. Toxic Zombie, on the other hand, has to actually sacrifice himself to pull off that damage. At that point, the only concern I would have with the ability is what are the stats of the ability, and is this an ability that Toxic Zombie's playstyle really calls for? So in other words, does this really synergize with his playstyle? To be quite honest, I don't really know. We're working with an unfinished character here, so I don't really have any strong opinions on the ability. All I know is that Grody Goop is just really annoying at its current stats. My opinion is Grody Goop, unrelated, but my opinion of Grody Goop is that Grody Goop should have slightly reduced stats, but the main thing you should take away from it is the mobility restrictions and the input restrictions. I have absolutely no clue why Grody Goop is also a stun. Its entire purpose is to deny an area. Do you think a zombie is going to willingly walk into a Grody Goop when they see it placed down? No. Especially if you shoot the Grody Goop at somebody, the zombie is gonna run away from it. You've denied the area, it doesn't need to stun and help confirm the kill on top of that. That's just really annoying. Now, I'm not sure if Toxic Mode was going to also like reduce your mobility and lock you out of your abilities when you were nearby. I don't think it was gonna do that. It currently doesn't do that, so I have no reason to believe that it would. But what I'm trying to get at is that there are ways to make Toxic Mode not an annoying ability. Again, I think ultimately, the thing you really want to be concerned about with an ability like this is, does it actually synergize well with Toxic Zombie? Maybe. Who knows? It ultimately depends on the rest of the character's kit. And now, finally, we have the Toxic Orb ability. And we were actually kind of correct when we speculated how this thing would work. So before I use it on Iceberg Lettuce, I'm just going to use it on a wall. And it pretty much functions exactly like Orbracadabra, except it has some interesting visual effects alongside it. But it even uses the same sound effects that Orbracadabra uses. It does have a time to live, so eventually it'll go away, as you just saw right there. And the way you were supposed to use this thing is you were supposed to use this on an enemy to emit 60 damage to them, and then I'm assuming the toxic effect would apply on them. It just doesn't do that. I think the reason why it doesn't is because, again, this is unfinished, so they never got around to doing that. And as if to illustrate my point, if you miss the enemy, you do still get the effect applied to them. Well, I landed that shot, let's try that again. So if I were to miss this shot, but still have the orb graze the enemy, you'll see that they get the VFX applied to them, but despite this fact, they don't actually get the toxic effect applied to them. And again, this is what I mean by as if to illustrate my point. Chances are they set it up so that way the VFX for the toxic effect gets applied to the enemy, but the actual toxic buff doesn't, and it's probably because, again, it was probably just unfinished. So we were actually kind of right when speculating how this thing would work. When it passes by an enemy, it does hit them with the Grody Goop effect. Albeit it does 60 damage on direct hit, but you kind of get the idea. And so that's pretty much Toxic Zombie's kit. Some interesting things to note about the character is, for starters, he has 125 HP, and also what I think is really interesting is Toxic Zombie actually has momentum carrying. And so if I were to demonstrate, you can see that I have the Garden Warfare 2 momentum carry. Oh, I'm not doing a very good job of it, let's try that again. But you can see that I have the Garden Warfare 2 momentum carry. You'll actually see that if I sprint and then start jumping, I can actually maintain my momentum I gained from sprinting. This is exactly why PopCap got rid of momentum carrying from GW2. It's because if you were to sprint, you can actually maintain that sprint speed via momentum carrying and then shoot while pretty much sprinting at the same time. It was kind of broken, so they ended up getting rid of it, which I think is a good thing for the game. It's really interesting to note that Toxic Zombie's physics file was using the Garden Warfare 2 preset. So there might even be a chance that Toxic Zombie could have actually been a character that was even designed and proposed when Battle for Neighborville was still Garden Warfare 3. Now, do I actually know if this is the case? No, that is completely speculative. But it's super interesting to think that Toxic Zombie could have been a part of Garden Warfare 3 had they never changed the game to Battle for Neighborville. Regardless, the character was still going to be in Battle for Neighborville because they still kept on updating this guy's files even in the latest version of the game. As a matter of fact, as a fun little piece of trivia, in case you didn't know, Toxic Zombie ended up getting a new ability called a Sticky Grenade in the current version of the game. Now, I'm not too sure what ability this replaces. I think the Sticky Grenade ability may have replaced the Toxic Orb, which is this guy right here. It could have even replaced the teleport ability, I'm not too sure. All I know is that in the current version of the game, Toxic Zombie has something called a sticky grenade, which is interesting because he didn't have this in Picnic. What's also really interesting is why would he have a sticky grenade if he is a sticky bomb launcher class? Unless they were maybe planning on changing him to be something else, that could have also very well have been the case. It's really hard to say because we don't have much closure on what this character would have ended up being. It's always been a little bit of an upward hill battle trying to figure out what Toxic Zombie was going to be in the first place. But despite all that, it's still really cool to see the character's kit functioning in-game, and not only that, but now having a cool custom-made model so we can truly visualize and play this character. And since I'm here, I might as well show you guys. I decided to go ahead and actually make alt skins for this guy as well. So here we have the basic ZDC Specialist. This isn't this guy's official name, it's a fan-made name that I came up with. The idea behind ZDC is that it's supposed to be a play on CDC. In case you don't know, CDC is the government organization that deals with biological outbreaks and diseases and things like that. Now, I'm not going to mention any real life examples of it because I don't want this video getting demonetized or anything like that, but you can probably think of a couple. But the point is that this guy is a play on CDC, but instead of C, it's Z. And the abbreviation actually does still make sense. So this skin we deemed as Teal Takeover. Now this skin was actually inspired off of one of the skins we see in the concept art for Toxic Zombie, except I decided to change the color of the goo to blue because not only do I think that this teal color is very nice, but also it gives the skin far more personality. I also think that it's really cool to make sure that every skin Toxic Zombie gets has a different color, because why do you want it to be green? It'd be cool if they were all different. Next up, we have Space Ranger. Now, Space Ranger is another skin that we inspired off of the concept art that we saw for Toxic Zombie. It was a little bit of an inside joke that I started calling this thing Buzz Lightyear because it literally does look like Buzz Lightyear. It has the Buzz Lightyear color scheme. There's a fair chance that they may have actually inspired that color scheme from Buzz Lightyear. Now, do I actually know if that's the case? Of course not, I don't. Again, it's just speculation. But dude, that literally looks like Buzz Lightyear. And so that's where the color purple came from. It was to kind of complete that Buzz Lightyear color scheme. And then finally, we have the Uzi Marauder. Now this one was also inspired off of the concept art we saw for Toxic Zombie, except this one was definitely the most transformative out of the few that we decided to remake. The main thing I really liked about it, and you saw me talk about it earlier in this video, is how he's pink, and I'm assuming that the point of him being pink was so that way he would look like the ooze from Oozivore. And the reason why I chose not to make him look exactly like the concept art is because we already have a skin that looks mostly white, which is the Space Ranger. So I decided to inspire the Uzi Marauder's color scheme off of Oozivore. And not only did I decide to do that, but if we get a closer look at this guy, I decided to make the normals on this guy's goo shader the ooze normals instead of the regular slime shader that you see on Toxic Zombie and Toxic Brains. So you guys can let me know what's your favorite recolor in the comments below. I think if I had to pick one, my favorite is Teal Takeover, but I am also a fan of the default one. Speaking of which, was this going to be Toxic Zombie's default look? We don't know. Again, we don't know, but it is worth mentioning. In BFN Picnic's files, there was a test model in the game's files referred to as Boxy. Boxy has his own color scheme in the game's files, and we can see that his head is green, his body is this navy blue color, and then his feet are brown. Now, whilst the boot of this skin isn't brown, everything else from this skin lines up with how he was colored in BFN Picnic's files. So again, I don't know if that was going to be the official default look for Toxic Zombie, but judging off of what we saw in BFN Picnic, it was my assumption that that was probably going to be the default look for the character. The only thing that's different is that he doesn't have brown boots in the concept art, but that's about it. And you know what? On the topic of Boxy, I am here in Blender with none other than Boxy. Now, since my BFN Picnic video, people have found out that Boxy even has animations. So he has things like a melee animation, idling with a bow. He doesn't have a bow, but just imagine like he's idling with a bow, probably going like from both of his arms like that. Just imagine like a bow arcing between his hands like that. Boxy has a death animation from when damage is coming from in front of him. He also has a second one for when he dies from something in front of him, and this time it's a little bit more creative. You can see that his head falls off, but right as he falls to the ground, he manages to catch his head and put it back on his body, which I think is a really, really fun looking animation. He has an explosion death as well, and it's just kind of him spinning around. He also has a cute little jester. which I think is pretty funny. Throwing a grenade is another animation that he has. Very, very basic. He has a dual-wield gun reload animation. And then he has a basic reload for, like, I'm assuming some kind of pistol or a one-handed gun. He has a machine gun animation where he kind of cocks the weapon back and then holds it out in front of him. Then he just has a basic idle where he's just kind of doing nothing. And whoa, where are you going, bro? Where are you going? I'm over here. This is a run cycle, actually. And he also has a basic walk animation as well. Nothing too crazy. He has an animation for walking in place. It's very short, but that's just because it doesn't need to be long. It's a pretty simple walk cycle. He also has a spawn in animation, and it's kind of interesting because it's starting from the ground, which I know that most games don't have your character spawning in from the ground. The only one I really know that does that is PvZ. He has a super beam animation, but this is more of like a Hadouken. He has a wizard charge slam, which is pretty much spell disaster. He has an animation for charging his staff and then I guess using it right after. Then he also has one for a reload animation for wizard staff. Now, you may have noticed that some of these are very similar to what we already see in the game. A good example of this is the melee animation that is literally the weed and wildflowers melee animation. The dual wield gun reload is very reminiscent of something that Imp would do. Heavy weapon, whilst it's not exactly how All-Star reloads his weapon, because I mean, All-Star doesn't reload his weapon, it is still worth mentioning that we do have a minigun character in the game, and that's none other than All-Star. And probably the two most obvious ones. I call this a Hadouken animation, but we all know this as the Ultra Ball animation, or at least something very similar to it. And then very obviously, this one's literally just called Boxy Wizard Charge Slam, so it's literally designed for Wizard. Now, what could these animations be? I really have no clue, I'm gonna be honest. If I had to guess, Boxy was definitely some kind of placeholder character they used. Now, whether or not this is a PopCap exclusive thing, or maybe this is used across other EA games, I have no clue. And the reason why I referred to this animation as a Hadouken rather than a Ultra Ball is because, yeah, sure, it's obviously inspired off of Hadouken. The reason why I call it that is because Hadouken is a very general term when talking about video games. And my little theory is that Boxy uses a bunch of in-house animations that are part of some kind of asset library that maybe PopCap has or EA has. And in case you don't know what an asset library is, it's exactly what it sounds like. Pretty much, it's just a collection of a bunch of these preset assets that any developer who is working under EA, I'm assuming, can just take and use. They can use it for the final product, or they can just use it for testing purposes. And that would kind of explain some of these animations. This is a minigun animation, but All-Star doesn't use the minigun in this way, unless they had some kind of generic minigun preset animation that they got off of some asset library. Same thing with this weapon reload, because Imp's weapon reload, it's a little bit more fancy than this. And again, Ultra Ball animation was probably a Hadouken animation. Just a very, very common thing to hear when talking about video games. So it's no surprise that when creating preset animations that could be used for a video game, one of those very generic ones is a Hadouken. Now, as far as the very, very specific ones like Wizard Charge Slam are concerned, is there a chance that these could have also been preset animations? Yeah, very much so. But they are just very oddly specific, and just to preface, to make it crystal clear, I don't actually know if my little theory is true. I don't know if they got this off of some in-house asset library that either EA houses or PopCap Vancouver themselves house. I truly don't know. I know another theory that people had for this guy's animations is that this was a model that they used to test animations or to create animations or practice animations off of, which might very well have been the case. I, again, have no clue. Ultimately, we would probably need some dude who worked on BFN and specifically worked with Boxy, who might know a thing or two to explain that to us. But if the latter is true, then who the fuck dies like this? I've never seen anybody in a PvZ shooter die like this. I will say this. If you do look at Toxic Zombie, I'm just saying, he's just a pile of goo in that helmet. It would be really cool if his helmet, when he died, his head got disconnected from his helmet and he tried catching it and died like this. Now, I don't know if this is a leftover of Toxic Zombie's animations. It's beyond me if Toxic Zombie even had a model in the first place or any animations. But a death animation like this for Toxic Zombie wouldn't be too far off the mark. At that point, the only counterpoint that would really counter my point is that BFN doesn't do death animations for the playable characters. That's only a Garden Warfare 1 and a Garden Warfare 2 thing. So I don't know. Again, this is all just theorizing, but these are the animations this guy has in Picnic, and it's pretty cool to see this guy moving in action. And also another cool thing that I was working on were prototyping different kind of weapons that Toxic Zombie could have potentially had. And I'm specifically referring to the weapon model. Now, this weapon you're looking at is based off of the bio rifle from, I think it's like Unreal Tournament or something like that. Now, I haven't actually played the game. It was just something that I think Lucky suggested to me. He's like, oh, you should look up bio rifle and then see like what you get on Google Images and then create a prototype weapon off of that. So what you're looking at here is a prototype weapon. It's not heavily detailed. It's made up of a bunch of basic shapes. A few of those shapes are a little bit complex, but besides that, they're all just very, very basic blockouts. Some of the key things I do like about this design is I really do like how there's wiring around the weapon. I also like how you kind of have the, I don't know if you would call it a clip, but let's just say that because I don't know what the proper term is. I like how you have the ammo clip kind of popping out from the side. And then you also have, again, I don't know the term for it, but I think it's like a grip or something like that in the front of the weapon, right? So this implies that this weapon could have been held with two hands. And it'd be really sick if we had custom animations, we could see Toxic Zombie holding this weapon with two hands. Again, we don't have access to custom animations for BFN at the moment, so I can't do that. But just imagine this guy holding it with two hands, right? Now, the next design is that sniper rifle idea I was talking about. Now, this blockout was based off of the intervention from Modern Warfare 2. Now, do I actually think that this weapon should look one-to-one with the intervention? Obviously not. This goes also for the previous weapon I showed you, which was the bio rifle that was inspired off of Unreal Tournament. Of course, these things would be PvZ-ified. You'd want to make them look more goofy and more creative. But again, the whole point of these blockouts is to just create a basic shape, so you can kind of get an idea for how this character could look like holding a weapon like this. Again, there's no custom animations, so he's holding a whole-as sniper rifle with one hand, which I wouldn't imagine being the case. Of course, this guy would hold it with two hands. You can kind of modify the design, but my idea for this thing is that he could be holding it with two hands, and it could be this like really big, bulky weapon, which I like the idea of. I can't quite put my finger on it, but something about Toxic Zombie holding a really big, bulky weapon is just such a cool concept to me. It doesn't even need to be a sniper rifle either. It could just be any big kind of weapon. Now, I'm not talking about all-star kind of big, but something that's more long rather than just big in general. And something that I think is pretty cool about the sniper rifle idea is that since it has a scope, you can make Toxic Zombie secondary scope in, which is pretty cool in my opinion because Toxic Zombie seems like he was going to be a defensive character given the fact that he's a sticky bomb launcher class. And sticky bomb launchers tend to focus on crowd control, kind of sitting in either the back or the front lines. And this would be really nice because you could use the scope to try and get sneaky angles on certain places you want to trap. But then when you start getting into more closer fights, you could unscope and then just hip fire with the sticky bomb launcher. But those were just two ideas I had for a potential weapon design Toxic Zombie could have. Let me know if you like any of these or if you have any cooler ideas in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And you know what? In the spirit of taking a look at BFN unused content, how's about we go ahead and play a full game of Ops Phase 3, joined by my friends Dark Demona, Raymond, Virjoinga, and Gargos.
Hey, Demona. What's up, Demona?
Hello! Dude, what is that picture, bro? Why are you trying not to laugh? Why are you trying not to laugh?
Who the hell? Wait, did someone make that?
Yeah, it's me.
It looks official.
Yeah.
Placeholder PvP. Thanks to Mona.
Alright, before we start, I want all the Toxic Zombies to get together, facing each other. Like in a little circle. Alright, now I just need to rub all of your guys'... Yeah, I just need to rub all of your guys' bellies for good luck. We're doing like the belly rub ritual. Alright, you guys ready? Boom.
Heck yeah, man.
Waves of plants are on the way! This is your fault somehow. Fuck that guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is our fault.
It's always Alien's fault, so.
Yeah, fuck you, Alien.
Oh, okay.
We didn't rub bellies right. We didn't do it in sync.
Yeah, we didn't do the Oni Plays dance right.
Yeah. No, we do need to give Toxic Zombie like an Oni Plays stance emote.
Please, that'd be fucking hilarious.
Yeah, once there's custom animation support, that's what we're gonna do.
3, 2, 1, Happy New Year! Oh my god! The plants are growing. No one else is growing.
Patrick,
I'd
your
rather not
penis is
say
showing.
it here. Oh, okay. Never mind then.
Oh my god. The mother load! This is really satisfying. Did you send it to Crazy Ops, by the way?
Can you play it on higher difficulties?
Yes.
You can play crazy.
I didn't know.
Should we restart and try and put on crazy ops instead?
Do it on crazy.
You're doing crazy. It's
Yep.
way harder on crazy.
3, 2, 1. I farted.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, get the vase weeds taken care of. Yeah, these guys are like a pain in the ass to like deal with as toxic zombie because you can't like direct hit them either on their face or at their feet. You have to destroy their vase to get through them. Dude, I love just seeing us walk around, bro. We're just like a bunch of gummy bears and jelly beans. I don't know why, but I'm imagining like those like those ADHD ass slime videos you see on like TikTok or YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm just imagine like you're just like casually. Imagine you're casually scrolling through Instagram, and then you just see like Toxic Zombie's face in one of those videos, just for no reason at all.
Yeah.
I can't believe it, guys. Surprisingly, we're doing very well by spamming the character who does 95 damage per shot.
Yeah.
The fact that he doesn't have a clip and
is
it's
so
all
balanced.
reserves.
Yeah, it's a very. It's kind of an underpowered character.
So do we have shared stars? I forget.
I don't think so.
I think it's is it shit? I've got 39.
I have 22. I didn't get any.
Yeah,
I got
zero.
one in that wave.
The upgrade allows you to summon stronger bots is like 3 stars if somebody wants to help buy towards
I'm gonna
that.
try buying star power. We just need number 26 until then we got it.
That's fair. I guess you could go for that. I mean, the one I was gonna get
Yeah.
is 3, so I might as well. But you can go for that one if you want. Is this all this feature does? Oh,
I got ya.
that thing insta kills. That actually. Oh, and there goes Demona. Is that who that was? Yeah, I think it was Demona. Oh.
Yeah, I would help you
You
guys.
should've got-
I'm just trying to defend from motherfucking citrons.
Bot spotting. Bots apply spotting to enemies they attack.
Yeah. You should buy that.
sounds-
No, you should buy that because the upgrade after that's good. It increases their fire rate and the damage they do. I think.
Alright.
Guys, we gotta take care of Super Bean.
We gotta take care of the stupid bean.
Oh, I can get it through the shield.
You can. That's funny. Just like lobbing shit at him.
Yeah. Just like toxic baby shit.
Yeah, top shit from
Ow, why did that do
Oh my
so much
God.
damage?
I died.
That does so much damage.
And he's on your side, so we can't like properly revive you yet. I'm gonna try and go for a revive. Oh, it's because we have stunted health. That's why.
Yeah, so we're dying way faster.
Hang on, I'm on my way back.
You might want to look at the grunt.
Oh my god, why is Demona like just floating up in the air for me? What the heck? I don't know if you guys see that.
Yeah, I see it.
That was really funny. Oh my god, I'm just getting so many kills. What the hell? Oh, because it's infecting the dandelions. That's why. It's spread, dude.
dandelions.
It's spreading. What? What the hell?
Holy shit.
I'm spreading so much of my toxic like effect.
You're spreading all your boogers, bro.
Yeah. How's this guy still not dead, bro? We're doing like 95 damage per shot.
Crazy mode, man.
Fucking die!
Oh, I got him.
Alright, we got the bot power boost. Sweet.
How much damage does this do now?
I don't know exactly, but they're actually not that bad. We can even give them like regen as well. I don't know, because the thing about the bots, right? Oh, actually, no. Okay. So see, the thing about the bots, right, is like, let's say we get like an elite boss, right? The graveyard disappears, meaning like all the buffs you get from the graveyard aren't really that useful anymore. So what you can instead do is you can you can give the bots regen, and you can spend money to have a champion. And those will last even when the elite boss spawns in, which is why I think that going for the bots is like more effective.
Why is the outhouse zombie so small?
He is.
Yeah, on my screen he is.
No, it's just that toxic zombie is the tallest class in the game.
Yeah, like I'm smaller, right? And he's perfectly fine.
Alright, we need to take care of this flower, yeah. So I think the way this wave works is there's going to be multiple flowers that will spawn periodically throughout the wave. So we'll get like a brief moment to kill the plants, but then there's going to be another one that spawns in that'll... Like right now, here we go, on the bottom left you can see. So now we have to kill this one before we can get to the other guys. So they pretty much like stunt the progression of this wave. Yep, and she's fucking dead. Oh, and Demona's dead.
So is Demona.
Alright, we got a champion ally now. And a space cadet. died, so we can get a champion super brands.
What should I buy?
Wait, how much stars do you have?
20.
20? I suppose yeah, buy armor, because why not, right?
Yeah, we need 20 more. I got it half.
Oh, you might want to make it quick.
I wonder who it is.
Oh.
What?
Yeah, it showed us before we got it.
Wait, no, it started playing the music for a wave that wasn't even super beams.
It bugged out.
Oh, did we just get a soft lock wave?
Yeah, it's a soft lock.
Alright, well, thank you for watching. That'll be that.
Yeah.
This game, fuck pop
Thank you
that.
for watching. We'll see you next time on the
Bye, guys.
Restart, question mark?
We'll see you guys on the Acorn show.
The amazing alien
I'll
circus.
see you on the flip side.
Oh my god, there's so many over here. Holy shit.
Alright, what was it? My computer is like lagging more and more and more for how many damn AIs are in this area.
What a 2012 GPU does to a motherfucker. Oh my god.
What killed you?
I'm sorry, I blew it up. I punched it.
Yeah, I was actively trying to walk away from it, and then that just happens. I'm like, oh, this isn't my fault.
Where is Demona?
Fucking dead, that's where.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I'll go back to the point.
Yeah, no, I'll go back.
yeah.
I'll go back.
Oh wow, I just like destroyed all of them in one hit with that. I landed on them with my half a jump thumb and killed all the weeds.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Dude, Demona just keeps like getting cooked, bro.
Yeah.
Just don't get close to the bean.
Never Virjoinga.
What is
I mean, I kind of
explosive
have to, man. I'm
surprise?
like SB, I got it.
Just Flying Fist.
Oh, Virjoinga's fine. Virjoinga has the HP for it.
Yeah, at least we're not stunted health anymore.
That's true.
Crazy mod!
Super minion.
Super minion.
Oh, does this mean they do more damage?
No. It's a single minion will spawn in that does like it has like way more health and like insta kills you.
Oh shit.
Oh, so just fucking
Okay, so it
like,
does do more damage.
just
just Radish Seedling or whatever.
Yeah.
But alright, we got bot spotting. I just bought it.
I put bot power. I just put 24 on it.
Oh, okay. It's only 23 left. I used all mine on that.
Okay. You probably get it like either at the end or midway through this wave. Oh, I see him. It's the potted terracotta weed.
Oh yeah, there he is. Yeah, he's got 10 trillion health.
You said he one
Oh my
taps?
god.
He's supposed
I
to.
don't even
so
need
I
the
do a shit
terracotta.
ton of damage. I think he's supposed to. Though.
Yeah, I think
Be a
he
broken
spent it on the
bot.
bot. No, I think he spent it on the bot, and he didn't get close to us.
the bucket head just running into battle.
Oh my god, there's so many terracotta weeds. Terracotta wildflowers.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So many
yeah.
cherries.
Oh, I'm getting destroyed. Hold on, I gotta run, dude. I'm getting annihilated.
You gotta run like the wind.
Oh, man, I gotta go to
Yeah.
FUD. I gotta run. Oh. At the same time, we have to coordinate this.
I'll go to one in the back.
Yeah, I'm going to the one on the right. We have to get them really low, and then we have to wait before we kill them. Oh, of course there's a heal weird near mine. Hold on. That makes this more annoying. Okay, I got mine pretty low.
Okay, mine's very, very low.
Oh, yeah, same. Mine's low. What about the other one?
Well, Demona's dead. I don't know where she is.
Yeah, because Demona keeps selling and dying.
Just threw Demona under the bus.
I can't revive you. I'm almost dead.
Okay, are we good?
I'm good to kill mine. What about you guys on the left?
Oh my god. Hang on. I just made it to Demona.
Alright, wait, alright, so are you guys ready to kill yours yet?
No.
No? Oh shit.
Alright, we're
I
getting.
almost said
Watch out. Alright, we're good.
Yeah, we're into the kill.
Oh, kill.
Kill. Yeah, hang on, going.
There we go.
Yeah.
Alright.
Okay, I can safely say that one could easily just lock up the public lobby.
I think you just like miss out on a bonus, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, you missed out on the bonus, yeah.
Oh, it's just a bonus. I thought it was a requirement.
No. They
Nah,
don't
it's
no
bonus
that
points.
kind of stuff, yeah, that kind of stuff usually
If it was
isn't.
another Anchor the Guardians situation,
No,
we
no,
were so
no,
fucked
that would
if
be.
that made it in the
that would be
update.
randos with that is horrible, man. I'm trying to spawn the upgraded champion.
Yeah, I donated some. It's
I
31
think I might have some.
stars now. Over health heroes. Uh-oh. Oh, so that means the champions are probably like insane HP, aren't? Yep.
Oh my god.
I see her. Okay. I can't see her anymore because of all the particles.
I don't even know where she was
Ow,
at.
ow, ow, ow,
Oh
ow,
my god, I'm dying! Oh my goodness!
ow.
Yeah, okay, I gotta get out of here, hold up.
And Demona died out of everybody.
Of course
Demona was the one.
Demona is the only one that fucking
Yeah,
died.
yeah, of course it's Demona. That's really funny.
Like 3 people were on the brink of death and only Demona died.
I wasn't even close to death. What the fuck?
I got to like 40
I guess I'm just
HP.
goated.
Oh, I found the super minion. No, he's gonna kill the Electrobot.
We gotta kill the yellow guy. I'll
got him.
man this for you. Oh, he killed him.
I feel so bad.
No, it's up again. It's up again.
Well, you actually get.
Oh!
Oh shit!
Hi, Demona. Okay, Demona actually spawned in as a plant.
Okay. This is
What a cheater.
Can you
What a
move?
silly
Oh, you
little
can.
cheater.
What? Because they're talking. Build one?
I mean-
What? Wait. Let me try. Can I actually build it?
Imagine that builds a garden.
Oh, install Grave Matic.
You should try it.
It works.
Can you interact with the
Oh, Grammatic.
Wait, what happens if you shoot the grave? Does it actually damage it? Oh, it does.
Yeah,
it
Oh, yeah, it
does.
does.
That's Demoto. On the right side, on the left side, on the left side.
Oh shit!
Oh yeah, I do like 8 trillion damage, so you can't do shit. Nah, 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 nah.
Shit. I can't concentrate. Fuck. Oh shit! Oh fuck!
I'm no wrecking.
The Mona has died.
You fucking zombie!
So what is Toxic Mode meant to do?
It's supposed to be like a charge up, and then it gives Grody Goop to anybody within a 30-meter blast radius. But it gives people Grody Goop, but like kind of does nothing. I don't know if like.
There's supposed to be like an explosion damage, no?
I'm pretty sure. Like I said, it may not have been implemented properly.
The explodey bot killed you.
Yep, now we know where Demona is. That's really funny. I just saw Demona's spotting icon for a second, and it just disappeared.
I didn't even notice it. She got killed so fast from the explodey bot.
No, but honestly, like a mode like this, right? Just like infinite waves until the other team finally like wins against zombies or something like that.
Yeah, I can't do that.
I didn't expect you to be there. I thought you were gonna be at the lower level.
Oh, we should get the barricades. Oh, I purchased the tier 1.
true.
I purchased the tier 1 barricades.
Armored. Oh god.
Wait, do they actually damage me on? Let me check.
They
Here,
slow,
right
at level
here,
1
right
they
here.
slow you down, and then at level 2 they damage.
Oh yeah, they only slow you down. Do they actually slow you down though?
No.
Okay. They might damage you then.
Okay, it costs. We need 2 more to get we can get the damage level.
Alright, we got damage. Alright, try running over it now.
Do you stand on it? It's just to make you do take 5 damage over
I
time.
can't even tell because someone's boss shooting me.
I mean, you were losing like ticks of damage, so I think you were.
Please work. Oh, hang on, wait. It's gonna work this time.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
Hang on.
Let's go!
Oh no! Oh no, we have an elite
Oh,
boss.
We're recording.
Wait,
At least I am.
Demona might be in trouble either way. Because of the damage buff we will have.
Oh no,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
right.
Hell yeah!
Wait, we have a damage buff from what?
From the cauldron.
We're an elite boss, so we.
Oh, that's if we don't fucking die.
Oh shit! Help! Help!
Run!
Attack the spooky squad!
I can see your name. I just noticed.
He has a lot of HP, dude. He has a lot of HP. Gosh.
I won't even have enough time. It's 10 minutes. I don't know if I have time to beat this.
We gotta kill the gluttonous chomper in time is what we gotta do, yeah. Here, I'll pick it. Okay, I'll pick up the thing and then I guess I'll do the damage, alright?
Oh my god, that's the most behind me.
Come on!
I'm
I'm about to
running.
die! No!
We need Virjoinga because of the thing. When I put it in the cauldron, what do? Do I have to wait around it?
You pick it up again.
Okay, I
And
drank
then
it,
run over.
Alright, go over to the boss.
Supercharged!
Use your crater
Oh, I'm
maker on the
glitched.
boss.
I can't do
Get
any
to-
abilities. I'm stuck right now. I can't do anything.
Oh, bro.
I can't even fire.
Oh, you gotta jump off the map. That's really unfortunate. Dude, Demonic instantly died.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to do this.
No, I think we'll be able to do it once Virjoinga. It's because Virjoinga couldn't do anything that time.
Yeah, I don't know why. When I got revived, I was unable to do anything. My crosshair didn't shock either.
You guys not gonna make it because you got literally.
I'm gonna die.
I'm healing.
Now, oh fuck!
Oh wait, Demona!
Where'd you
Oh,
go?
I'm unrevivable. Damn it. I didn't jump out in time.
We didn't do shit.
Yeah, we kind of didn't do shit. I think we're supposed to have an extra player.
I think
Come on,
it's
join on the other
expecting us
team.
to have.
I can't.
It's expecting us to
Rejoin.
have
I
like
really
5
can't.
players right now against it.
Rejoin the server, see if you can help us.
Yeah, you might have to do that.
we might actually need your help.
Yeah, no, we're gonna lose if you don't.
Pick it up, pick it. Who wants
Virjoinga,
it?
you choose the thing. There you go. died! No!
Oh, join back, hurry! Oh my god.
Fucking died. That is so much damage.
We don't have enough time. We do not have enough time for this. This is not gonna
Yes,
happen.
we do. We have like 4 minutes. It takes like 10 seconds to make one.
I'm just clearing out the weeds, to be honest, at this point. I'm just gonna clear out the weeds for us. We did get it almost half HP. Gargos, did you please tell me you
Yes.
chose Skytrooper and Rapid Fire. Alright.
Yes.
What about Ammo Thingamabob?
Ammo Thingamabob and
Oh, okay,
Rapid Fire.
good. Wait, did you get Skytrooper though, like the primary?
Yes.
Okay.
What's so special with this combo?
You just shoot really quickly. I mean, it's a Rapid Fire plus Skytrooper plus Ammo Thingamabob.
We got like 3 minutes left, so we had to fucking hold this shit up.
Alright, so who should get it this time? Should Gargos get it maybe, or should Virjoinga get it again? I think Gargos, because he can sprint.
Probably me, yeah.
Gargos, get it.
Go.
Get it. Here, I'll clear these guys out.
I'm like trying to heal, but there's always a fucking corn just like canceling it out. Yeah, we have
No, we're kind of doing it.
We're not gonna have the time.
We go really, really fast.
Yeah.
We need to kill that chomper, kill everything as fast as possible. Okay, rush that fucking chomper, bro.
Like, I know this is quitter talk, but like we got a fucking minute in like a boss hunt.
Oh, we can beat it if I could find the fucking. I see the marker. And I
What's the
can't find it.
Look how far away it is too, dude. There's not enough time.
We're not gonna make it.
Oh wow.
We're in pieces.
Will we get overtime?
This.
Yeah, there's not though.
Oh, and my game crashed.
Really?
Your game crash.
You look like a
Your
fucking
game
slurp.
Dude, oh my god, Gargos! I see that. What the fuck? Holy
Wait, what
shit!
happened?
Oh
What's
my
going on?
god!